Welcome to Product Marketing Rendezvous. We're preparing to unleash yet another exciting presentation that's sure to set your pulse racing. But first, we want to thank you and our ensemble of speakers and participants for helping us bring this pioneering event to life. Without you, it'd be fantasy, a mere pipe dream. And remember, have your questions at the ready, because the speakers will be answering your questions and offering tailored support after their presentations. Leave your question in the comments below and get awesome advice from an expert in the field. It's really that simple. Let's resume the rendezvous.
Okay, so hello everyone. Thank you for joining me today on my today's session. I hope you've been enjoying the event so far. I'm sure that all of the sessions were great and that the rest of the day will rock also. My name is Maja and I'm sending you greetings from Zagreb, from Croatia. And today I would like to talk to you about in-product engagements. So how to use these tools and engaging messages to lead your customers to what we like to call the aha moment. So how to drive adoption, how to drive retention, how to make your customers loyal and happy. Okay, so before we move on to the topic itself, I would like to share with you just a few sentences about me. So my name is Maja Blazek. I'm from Zagreb and I've been PMM for almost 5 years now. I started my career as digital marketer and then move on to the product marketing space, and I really liked it. So I'm staying here for now. So I led teams in smaller corporations, in smaller companies, in really big corporations. We worked on go-to-market strategies, on pretty complex product launches, on lots of sales enablement on a global scale. I collaborated a lot with content marketing and digital marketing teams on all of the campaigns that we were doing. And I really love industry events, and I always encourage knowledge sharing inside of my team. And this is why I also like, going on this kind of events and learning from you guys and also sharing what I've learned so far. And I really always encourage people to join these kind of events. And speaking of my tips for PMMs, so I always say, like, be the ambassador of PMM inside of your company. And why I'm saying this, because a few times I joined companies where PMM was like pretty new team. And first of all, we need to explain to people like, hey, who are you guys now? Like, what are we doing? How can we help company succeed? How can we collaborate with other teams? So, make your mission team with people from sales, from product, from CSM, from marketing, from all of the teams to which you will collaborating with, to achieve the goal that you want to achieve. And the second thing is talk to customers whenever you have that opportunity. You need to understand them to be able to create an impactful story around your product. Okay, so enough about me. Moving on to the topic. So working as a PMM, you are probably working on a lot of activities related to onboarding your new customers, driving adoption, driving retention. So you all know that your product managers want to build a product that customers and users will really love and use as they should, be aware of all of the capabilities and use as much of it. But sometimes when we are talking about a really complex product, and even though with simple ones, you need to help out the users on understanding the product and inspiring them on how to use it even better to achieve their ultimate goal. So speaking of the situation where you are aware that you build an awesome product, so ready, set, go, let's launch it. But things that very often happen are things like, hey, users are not using this feature, but I mean, it's awesome. Why they are not using it? Or like people keep asking how to do this, and you know that it's all in the knowledge base, but maybe they don't know that. then why they keep using this instead of that to do, the same operation? It can be done in a different, I don't know, faster way. Or why is no one using this wizard that we built? Or I don't know, this update is really great, but for me it's hard to explain it all in the email, how to show it or all, where to show it all. Or like, hey, our customers keep using this feature for only one use case, and so on. So there is a solution for all of these situations. We will talk about it now. So speaking of the like aha moment, and why should you even care about it? I actually found this explanation of aha moment, and I actually coded it here because it perfectly explains it. It says that, hey, the aha moment is actually a set of actions that separates customers who really find the value in your product from those who actually don't. So what is our role here? We should be aware of those actions. We should define those actions. And then it's always a great idea to try to talk to champion users to get some qualitative feedback to be sure that these are really actions that help customers see the true value in our product and to do the job and why we even built this feature and do they understand it. And then when you are aware of those actions, then you can try to boost retention by driving other users and new users toward doing these exact actions and see how the product can help them. And those are these like aha moments. So speaking of the example of those aha, I like to say like in plural moments during the entire journey. So I took for an example a food delivery application. So here our Anne downloads the food delivery app, which she wants to order a lunch for her. So, but she wants to be quick, she's doing that in her break between two meetings, and then she sees a filter by address option. Okay, she wants to see how it works. Will this make a job easier for her? And then app really shows her only restaurants that are delivering to her specific address and that are open at that specific moment. She chooses a restaurant, she orders food, and then she wants to see when she can expect that food. And then app has, for example, a real-time updates or even tracking a courier, where is the food, when she will get it. And then food is delivered on time. And of course, Anne is happy. She leaves positive feedback. She even suggests to her friends to start using the app, and then she orders again. So when we are talking about those aha moments, let's say that the first one was here. So here it was, aha, this saves really so much time for me. This is great. And then we have another one. Okay, I'll finish my task while I'm waiting. I have enough time to do it, and then I'll have enough time to jump on my next meeting, for example. And then in the end, like the biggest aha, like, okay, yeah, this is exactly what they said. This was easy, it was quick, it was at my doorstep as shown. I will definitely use it again. So, but imagine, totally different situation. Like, imagine that Anne didn't have a chance to filter by address, or if she couldn't find that option, or if it wasn't there, easily understandable, and you didn't even try to explain it somehow in the app how to do it, or if there was like no time when will delivery be there. So she would have totally different experience. There would be like no instructions in the app how to help herself, how to use it more efficiently. Like, would she finalize that order or would she use it again? Like, probably no. So, speaking of aha moments, if there are no such moments, there is like no satisfaction and usually like no retention. So now, try to imagine a complex, really complex SaaS platform, or a mobile application which is rich of features, like, I don't know, like music streaming service, for example, with all of the features, little wizards, updates, and hidden options that you have somewhere in your menus. So how to achieve that aha in that specific situation? This is actually where those in-product or in-app engagements come in handy. So let's move a little bit back to the situation where we said, oh, we've built an awesome product and we did our homework. So we prepared all the content for the website. We wrote documentation and filled the knowledge base. So we covered all of the use cases, created videos, sent out all of the emails, explained it all on the paper. published it everywhere, educated internal teams about it so they can help if someone reaches in. But you see that user keeps using the same 3 features. He forgot about new stuff. He has no idea what else he can do. He searches for maybe for an alternative to do something. So he goes to a competitor trying to find a solution for his problem. But there is a solution. You can help him out. So why in product or in-app engagement? So you should use them with meaningful interactions, by using the technology, customer intelligence behind those tools that they usually have. So you are showing up the right message to the right person contextually in the right moment. And then you are driving them to that aha moment and making sure that they will use the capabilities of your product as they should, as you expected to do that. And so why do I like to say sometimes you see that these are called like in-app notifications, but I prefer saying engagements because it's not just there to be seen. Your ultimate goal is to motivate the user to really click, to read more, to boost usage, to increase their satisfaction and retention in long term. You want to help them succeed. You want to help them be even more successful and to see the true value in the product. This is why you are using in product or in-app engagements. So I would like to go through 5 or 6 examples of these just to show you how this works. I know that some of you are probably already using this kind of tools to send in-app engagements, but some of you maybe didn't have a chance to do it. So maybe this will inspire you depending on the product that you're working on. So first of all, it's product updates or change management. You all know that if there is a big change coming up in the product, you don't want to just, one day wake up and say, hey guys, we are removing this feature, goodbye, have a nice day. You want to announce those kind of things, help them to be ready for this change, to understand how to use the product from that moment, and then in the future. So you want also support, for example, email with additional communication channels. So regular notifications that can help your customers follow all important changes and updates in the product. Those can be published through those in-app communications, or you can announce new features, important bug fixes, improvements, or announce, as I said, big upcoming change. And then you use it to share the links to release notes, product how-tos. If you have a nice video created, you can put it there. So here is one example. This one is from GoToWebinar. So there was obviously new feature transcripts, and they used the in-app engagement to inform me about that. There is a link, so you can click and see how it works, and then you can probably, go around the platform and try it yourself. And then the second one, of course, is this is something that a lot of us are spending a lot of time on. So those are onboarding product tours. This is especially important for the aha moment because this is moment where they, started using your product. They trust you. They decided to pay for the product, and then you don't want to disappoint them. So use the onboarding product tools, to help them to be sure that they made the right decision and that the product really does what was promised to them. So besides preparing the product documentation and things in your knowledge base and linking from the product itself to those pieces of content, which is mandatory thing to do, but you can also create a nice slider, or you can use those hotspots where you pop up with little messages explaining like, hey guys, here is something for you, and then here is something for you, and then here is something for you, and there. So but be smart with those. And for example, you can set up a tour of, for example, 3 to 5 steps or slides. It depends on the format that you are using, where you show up on the first login, how to use things, where is something in the UI itself, etc. And then, for example, after you set a condition, so for after 5 logins, you can show them even more and bring more ideas on how to use the product. And here is especially important to, of course, monitor and optimize. So monitor clicks, monitor progress. So how many steps did they finalize? Did they saw the entire tour, or are they, shutting it down on second step? So you need to optimize those kind of things. Here is just one small example from Slack. So they are, showing you where is something, how you can use it, and you can easily, skip things if there is not that you are interested in, or continue the tour. Then these are maybe a bit more complex, and it actually depends on the functionality that the platform in the background that you are using for in-app engagements that you have. Some of them have like more capabilities for doing this, some of them have less. But these actually help you, to be really smart, to micro segment your users and to target really smartly. Here you are using this kind of messages to inspire customer and really increase feature adoption. So first of all, you need to ask yourself, like, what do you want to achieve? Do you want to increase the adoption of some feature, or do you want to help them understand what else they can do with some feature that they are already using enough? So depending on that your goal, what you want to achieve, then you build your message. So for example, you build your segment, you put conditions in the platform. For example, I want all of the people from, I don't know, tourism industry who logged in 10 times, but they never used some specific feature. And then you want to show message for them. Then you add a nice visual, you add a nice message, you add a CTA, which can, by clicking, it can lead them to some a piece of content that you created, like use case or how to guide, best practices or whatever you created, and then lead them there. For example, here is one of those messages from the Airbnb. So I've been booking, like, things when we used to travel all the time, but maybe I didn't use book your trip instantly feature. Never. I really didn't. And then the message popped up and told me, like, hey, you have there is instant book listings, and explained to me what that is. And then I could easily click and see how it works, but it could maybe lead me to a how-to guide or something else. So they are inspiring me on, hey, you can be, even more efficient, it can be even faster, there is a feature to do that, etc. And there is another one. So if I never used my inbox, maybe I'm a new user, so they knew that, and then they showed me, hey, there are no messages that yet, you can find a place where you can get in touch with anyone whom you want to from the platform. Start exploring. Okay. Next example is extra exposure to actually boost your content. We all know that it takes really a lot of time and coordination to create a really nice piece of content, like some kind of an ebook or a guide, or those kind of things. Sometimes, it's useful to attract new leads from your marketing perspective, but sometimes it also has some things that can maybe help your customers do their business even better. So if you create these kind of things, you can easily also promote them with those nice pop-ups. Don't, make them intrusive and like things that are around while people are trying to do their job, but you can put it somewhere. It can be also a webinar if you have some education and those kind of things. So you show a pop-up, it can be, a pop-up, or it can just show somewhere in the corner and those kind of things. This was actually very useful for us. We were doing this kind of things in my ex company. So we were very often sharing like best practices or how to build some kind of a campaign in the platform and similar. Okay, but it's not only like, retention and making them happy with showing them what else I can do with the platform. You can also help out with those messages for like cross sell or upsell things. So, but with these things, you really need to be smart. It needs to show up, contextually in the right moment, at some place where it makes sense to show up. Here I have a great example. So someone was using Spotify And when they clicked on a specific feature, which was available only like in a premium subscription, it actually, showed them a message, hey, you can have this, but you need to buy premium subscription. So it didn't show up like randomly, like, hey guys, let's go to premium. No, but when they clicked on the feature, so he was really interested about that. He wanted to use that, and then it showed up. Okay. And of course, in the end, I have something that we are all doing, using different kinds of channels. Those are surveys, but you can also use them inside of the product, because you always need to listen to your customers. So you can do things like MPS or whatever kind of survey you want to do inside of the product. What I usually like to emphasize is the follow-up. So don't forget to follow up based on the responses. If you think that by their response there is something that you need to react on, maybe you can try to get like, why did you answer in that specific way? So if someone gave you a low grade, you probably want to know why is that happening. You want to give feedback maybe to a product manager or to salespeople or to whatever person is not satisfied with. So try to see where and when you want to, do a follow-up after their reply and see why did I answer in a specific way. Okay. Here is very simple example of an MPS survey that showed up in the application. So how likely are you to recommend this software to your friend or colleague? Okay, so those were just like some examples. You can do millions of things, and for me, this was like super exciting thing to do, and I'm looking forward to implementing something similar with my colleagues in my company where I'm working now. I'm working in Lemax, and we are a cloud-based platform for tour operators and travel agencies. We are trying to digitalize the entire travel business procedures and workflows and automate everything that they are doing. So it's a pretty complex platform because it really covers their entire a business process. So I think that this kind of engagements will nicely fit in it and help customers do what they really want to do inside of the platform. But of course, when we are speaking about communications and sending out things to our population, we need to be careful. We need to be smart. So there are some best practices and do's and don'ts we learned by doing. We were testing a lot of things. So there are just three things that I would like to emphasize now. So first of all, don't over communicate. Don't, pop up and show up all the time everywhere. You know, don't send non-targeted messages. Show, all of the messages to everyone. Please don't do it. Set also some tools help you really to set priorities, to set frequency, to set like if someone saw this message, don't show this message to him at least for a week, and those kind of things. You can play around with it. So don't act like, okay, I'll leave all of these messages hanging around here and then I'll just leave, and then you expect that people will read it and really understand it. They won't. They will dismiss all, and that's all that you will achieve with those messages. Then the second thing, really try to be personal and contextual. That personalization is, almost a buzzword. It's everywhere. You need to be careful with messages that you are sending out. So the same rule applies here. You need to target properly. You need to deliver a meaningful message to the right audience in the right moment. So not all messages are for everyone. So be careful with it. And the third thing, really try to emphasize the value, really try to inspire the user. Don't just brag around about your super cool features, but try to show them the possible impact of using it, how to achieve that impact. Try to help them succeed. And then you will get that aha moment, like, oh yes, this is what I need. This is really helping me succeed. Okay, so I think that would be all. But speaking of the aha moment, so for Product Marketing Alliance, I think that my aha moment really happened at Pmm Summit in London, when we were able to travel. I hope that it will happen again. But I was there. I met a lot of great people. I learned really, really a lot. This community is really great. So PMA, keep up the good work. Thank you all for joining my session. I hope that I inspired you, that you have some ideas how to use in-app engagements and that you will start doing it very soon. So thank you and have a nice day and enjoy the rest of the sessions today.
Welcome back to Product Marketing Rendezvous. Having a great time so far? We can't say we're surprised. After all, it's an event quite like no other. The good news, we've plenty more magic up our sleeves that's guaranteed to blow you and your fellow PMMs off your feet. But before we serve up another slice of product marketing prowess, we want to take a moment to thank everyone who's played a part in making this event possible. Speakers, presenters, and of course you, the product marketing community. Remember, you can engage with speakers and their sessions by posting your question in the comments section or reaching them in our Slack community. Now sit back and above all, enjoy.
So, hi everyone, I'm Roger Karlsson. I work with go-to-market strategies and commercialization of international business-to-business cloud products in a company called Visma. Thanks PMA for inviting me. I'm really happy to be here and be a part of this live event, online event, even if it, of course, had been much more fun to meet you all in person. It is what it is, and we have to keep up with this, right? When I first started with product marketing back in the 90s, there were almost no limits, and investors in the booming IT business was almost throwing money into all investments in IT. They were super afraid to get behind. If you didn't have a website or you didn't have an E in front of your brand, you were immediately disqualified from taking the lead into the future, right? Now, this may perhaps tell you a little bit about my age, but I also want to use this as an introduction to my subject, because what we learned from that early days of the modern IT society that we actually have today is not only that it's important to spend your IT investment more wisely, but also that a successful growth of your product is completely depending on your ability to build a strategy and to execute on that strategy, even if you have a real complex environment, especially if you have customers in several countries. And just pouring in more money will not help. You have a product loved by customers and can't wait to spread it all over the rest of the world, right? But speed of change is increasing. New demands for customers, new players in the market, with new competitors popping up all the time. And at the same time, the software market is going more and more global. Services, platforms, solutions are easily deployed in multiple languages. And cloud solutions today are designed to be scaled in an international context. And all expect growth. Founders, investors, business developers, we all are to some extent engaged in the business that grows. And of course, we all want as many customers as possible to use our excellent product. But you cannot serve them all, right? We have limited availability of time and resources, and we have to find a way to prioritize. And segmentation is challenging. So, what if you knew where to go to get more engagement from your customers and your development teams, and to make sure you earn the most possible? And when you have a product that could scale outside your own country, what would happen if you start targeting market segments that really gives you the best profit? And as go-to-market is more challenging and more complex if you're working in an international environment, what if you find a way to organize your international go-to-market in a way that secures that resources are used in the most efficient way? You'll need a customer segmentation strategy. During this presentation, I will show how to narrow down the segment strategy to a level that really gains the business. I will show examples how we in Visma have created a better engagement, both from customers, product development, and go-to-market teams by streamlining and hard prioritizations. I will also show you how we in Visma work with go-to-market in an international context, and we'll give you some ideas on how to implement a framework of tools and templates in order to work smarter, and more efficient. First of all, a little bit about Visma. Visma is a leading cloud software company, provider in providing software all over Europe. And we work with software that automates and simplifies the core business in both the private and the public sector. Now, we have grown a lot in the last couple of years. We are almost 12,000 employees right now, and our revenue is 1.5 billion euros. And the main revenue that we have come from cloud solutions, where we invest over 80% of all R&D spend. And we have a mix of products, both from acquisitions and from own development. And many of our solutions are used by customers across countries and across markets. So that's a little bit about us. And as I work with go-to-market and commercialization for one of the most strategic international cloud solutions in Visma, I do, of course, have an extra focus and an extra interest in how to increase the overall growth and how to scale our business. Preparing to introduce a new product or service is a significant task for any business. You have invested a considerable time, money, and resources in developing a great product, and you want those efforts to pay off. And you see the potential. You want all to buy your product, but who is all then? To be able to narrow down your segmentation strategy, you'll need to have a plan, and you need to balance your investments and resources with the opportunities that arise. So where are the bottlenecks? And do we have a product ready for the new markets? And what about the organization? When are we ready to take a new product into a new market? I'm sure this group of marketing experts in PMA already knows a lot about how to do a segmentation, but I still want to show this STP approach, which is one great way to organize your segmentation strategy. The STP approach highlights 3 areas of decision making: segmentation, targeting, and positioning. Right. So let's dig into it. And how have we done it in Visma? Well, the risk of having a too wide offering that includes many markets with many different needs is that it's very hard to keep the quality of the product intact. You will start patching here and there, and perhaps without a clear strategy on how to prioritize customer needs. Every customer you onboard also comes with expectations that you are going to keep the solution healthy, compliant, and competitive over time. So we need to start focusing in certain areas. In Visma, we have a quite pragmatic approach to segmentation. We know that businesses is local, and our different local Visma companies in each country, they have a great understanding of their customers and their local markets. And to make the STP in Visma, we include our business units, our different business companies, Visma companies, and customers also, by interviewing them. What are their jobs to be done, and what are their shared needs? What is common and what is not? If you have the ability to have pilot customers, the direct feedback from customers using your product is, of course, incredibly valuable. And based on the customer's behavioral characteristics and shared needs, we decided in this particular case to create a segmentation based on industry, country, and size. And the next step, an international go-to-market strategy needs to have a clear segmentation based on data and analytics. Insight is everything. Together with the relevant local Visma companies, who has the best industry knowledge and the best on-the-ground experience, we started to evaluate the proposals we had on the different segments. What is the market potential in each segment, and what is the competition? The product fit in the selected market is, of course, key. Identify if there are any gaps due to localization, compliance, and in what context the national ecosystems your product need to perform. When having an international cloud solution serving several markets, the API capabilities are, of course, very important, as every market has their own setup of different surrounding solutions you need to be part of. And by that, it's also beneficial to have a product that can be priced and packaged in a flexible way, as local markets, customers, and also competition often are different. It's really important for us, not just to look at the market potential and the business case expressed in euros, dollars, and kronor. In an international context, make sure you also take cultural differences in consideration. What abilities do we have to create an efficient go-to-market due to the existing organization? Try to understand concepts like deadline, negotiations, commitments, tone of voice, time, risk, etc. And because all these concepts would be perceived by customers differently from country to country and culture to culture. One important factor is also to see where the market pulls you. Even if the data looks good and you have identified a great opportunity, don't force yourself into a new market. And from this, start to build your list of prioritized target segments. You want to develop a positioning statement, a value proposition, and a strategy for each selected segment. In our case, we identified 4 segments that could have our focus and 1 industry as the most prioritized. But even if you look at the segment, even if you look at 1 segment or 1 industry, we saw that it was still too widely described. We had to break it down to a very practical level. We decided to define the stereotype customer for each segment. So we started to describe for whom we are creating value. Based on the interviews with the product managers and customers, we try to understand the customer pain points, their gains, and what value we are to deliver with our solution. We started to analyzing and documenting the different roles, their user personas, to be able to build the right solution. And for every prioritized role, we described a set of initiatives or scenarios. And for every initiative, we'll link the customer value to the operational drivers. We identified also who our internal sponsors are, and we also did an assessment and a goal setting of the customer experience. This quite detailed level of description gives us a great tool to create an engagement around value creation. Instead of focusing on features, both from the product teams and from the commercial side, everyone can contribute to the discussions. And by being transparent with our common prioritizations, it's much easier to keep focus in the execution of the strategy itself. And from the definition of the value proposition, it's much easier to tailor your external messaging and to be able to create a marketing content that also attracts the buyer side of the solution. As a result of the focused segmentation, you will have a prioritized list of target market segments, a detailed segment description with roles, initiatives, and what value to be created. And this will, of course, benefit the better product focus that also will gain the quality of the product and the customer experience. And we also saw that by having meetings where both R&D teams and the commercial side was present, along with the top management, everyone had the same information. And we could create this organizational transparency and create an engagement around value creation. And that was a really good start for us when we started to implement the segmentation descriptions. It's much easier if you have everyone like singing from the same songbook. Right. So now you have the segmentation strategy in place. But international launches are challenging. Companies today are facing a complex landscape when it comes to new technologies, new methodologies, and ways to engage people in the organization. So how can you organize your go-to-market in a way that secures that the resources are used in the most efficient way, and how we can make sure that they collaborate to speed up the time to market? Well, in Visma, we have developed a framework for go-to-market. And this framework can be adopted depending on the size of the launches we are planning. The larger launch you have, the more support you need in terms of resources, planning, and structure. When we plan to introduce a product into a complete new market, we call it a tier 1 launch. It could be like we have an existing product that you want to expand from the private sector to the public sector, or it could be a national product that you decide to introduce to a new country. Then it's a tier 1 release. So by providing tools, templates, and process support for launches, we make sure that the commercialization part is handled in a professional manner. Are we aligned on what value we should deliver to customers? Do we have a plan for rollout? Who is part of the launch team? And do we have an appointed launch team manager to lead the project? And what plan do we have for sales and marketing enablement? All these items connected to launch are taken care of first in the commercial business plan, which is the overall info and planning document, and also in the market readiness checklist. These tools have been used in almost 100 projects around Visma. And the feedback we got is that not only does it create a structure, but also creates a buy-in from the organization. People know what's expected from them, and they can contribute to the rollout in the good way. So I have now given you a short glimpse, an example of how we in Visma work with segmentation by narrowing it down to a level that really gains the business. And I have shown you how we work with go-to-market in an international context and giving you some ideas how to implement a framework of tools and templates in order to work smarter and more efficient. Work with your data and focus your effort on new target segments. But even if the data looks good and you have identified a great opportunity, don't force yourself into a new market. Be open for where the market pulls you. Create a list of your prioritized target markets and develop a positioning and stereotype description. It will help you to understand your customers and what they want to achieve. Make sure your product is ready to scale and have an open API strategy, because you'll need to perform in several different ecosystems. Is it possible to try out the new market with a soft launch or by a soft launch? Can you achieve a product market fit in your new segment market before investments in offices and partners and resellers? If you can do that, that will really benefit your plan. Keep close to your customers. Make sure you have a controlled rollout with focus on the customer experience. Implement feedback loops to follow your performance in every step of the customer journey. And be structured when executing your go-to-market. Don't just assume that everyone knows what to do. Launching products in an international context requires a plan, and a go-to-market framework can help you to be successful with your launches. Last but not least, a big thank you to my colleagues and other contributors in Visma and outside Visma. Matthias, Ulf, and the portfolio team. Lisa, thank you for great cooperation around go-to-market. And thank you, PMA and LinkedIn communities, for sharing knowledge and sharing best practices and thoughts. It's great to have all this input. It makes your work so much easier. If you have any questions or want to get in contact, the easiest way to find me is, of course, on LinkedIn, where you are very welcome to reach out. Thank you very much for listening, and have a great day.
Welcome, bienvenue, g'day, ni hao, hola. Wherever you are joining us from today, we want to say a huge welcome to our global community. We hope you are enjoying Product Marketing Rendezvous. And a special thank you to all our speakers and participants who together form our spectacular international lineup. Their sessions are bursting with insights to help the product marketing community level up. And remember, have your questions at the ready because the speakers will be answering your questions and offering tailored support after their presentations. Leave your question in the comments below and get awesome advice from an expert in the field. What's not to love about that? So now let's resume the rendezvous.
Hello and welcome to Product Marketing in the New Normal. I'm Irit Schwartz and I'm a Product Marketing Manager at Facebook. And I'd like to talk to you today about the way we could adjust and change as product marketers in this new world of working and living. I see product marketing as uniquely positioned to help companies work better together and grow while adjusting to these changes. And I'll share a bit about what has been working for me in my role at Facebook. Now, I'm sure that you're so over the term new normal. It's right up there with "you're on mute" and other famous 2020 quotes, so duly noted. But today I want to do a few things. I want to have a walk down memory lane. I want to discuss the PMM professional cocktail, talk about the 5 levels of remote working, talk about how we can adapt as PMMs, and some best practices for my role at Facebook. So first, let's walk down memory lane. Do you remember the working world as it was in late 2019? Conferences, meetings, travel, coffee chats, and now the dreaded handshake. Now, fast forward to 2021, and you're probably sitting in your pajamas, watching me and my living room window as I talk to a screen sitting in between my kids' toys and the laundry. Nothing about this world is normal. David Kessler, who is a grief expert, told the Harvard Business Review that the loss of normalcy, the fear of economic toll, the loss of connection, this is hitting us and we're grieving collectively. Now, at this point, you're probably wondering, wait, did I accidentally join a psychology course? Well, no. And yes, I see a product marketer as being a mixture of a psychologist, a journalist, a teacher, a relay runner, and a fine dancer. I'm just kidding about that last one. But because we are at the intersection of product, marketing, and sales, we are the knowledge base for others. We have the context and the know-how from all of these worlds. We're able to understand and analyze needs, and also have the ability to make decisions and drive actions that would address these needs. This is why I think product marketers are at a good place to adapt and progress under these new circumstances. So let's talk a bit about product marketing at Facebook so you have more context into what I do on a daily basis. As an organization, we cover a wide range of responsibilities, from opportunity sizing, customer segmentation, competitive analysis, growth planning, sales enablement, go-to-market plans, all that good stuff. And my team specifically focuses on the growth aspect in product marketing, meaning that I help businesses and partners grow through our solutions and products. In my day-to-day work, I work with clients, with sales leaderships and sales teams to ensure that they are equipped with the knowledge that they need to maximize the value that they see from our solutions. Now, my journey with COVID was a bit of a weird one. When COVID hit Europe in March 2020, I was just back from maternity leave after being out of the business for about 10 months. This is actually a ping that I sent my manager a day before I started. And I just said that this is my first pandemic, so I wasn't sure what to expect. I haven't set foot in the office since May 2019, and I've never met my team or my manager in person. Now, during my onboarding, I was overwhelmed with video conference calls, with Zoom events, with pings and posts, and you name it. And I couldn't help but thinking that we're trying to recreate the office life online. Now, Matt Mullenweg, who is the founding developer of WordPress and the founder of Automatic, the company behind WordPress, has an interesting view on this topic, as all of Automatic's employees, all 1,200 of them, are working remotely and have always been working remotely. He describes 5 phases of working remotely where companies can advance in the way they see and react to remote work. Now, at a high level, just describing the levels, level number 1 is about companies not taking a significant action to work remotely. So if you have to, you can connect through your phone or your laptop, but you'll probably prefer to go into the office to do whatever it is that you have to do. Now, most companies were at that stage pre-COVID. Level 2 is trying to recreate the office online. So explaining the amount of meetings we have, Zoom events, happy hours, and more screen time. And a lot of companies are at that stage right now. Level 3 is about adapting to the medium. So taking advantage of the tools and working on alignment through them. Now, written skills and clear messaging are a crucial part at this stage. Level 4 is asynchronous communication. This is where people are rewarded for their work that they're doing without strict guidelines on how and when they do it. And level number 5 is nirvana, where an online organization is working better than an in-person one. Now, I don't want to dwell on all of these stages or talk too much about them, but I do like to focus on level 3. And the reason why I'd like to focus on level 3 is because on top of the context and the knowledge function that product marketeers serve in a company, clear communication and messaging are their fundamental strengths. Now, in my role, my main stakeholders are sales leadership and sales teams. So my learnings are based on the work that I do with them. But I'd like to discuss on how we can adapt to these changes as PMMs through my learnings working with these teams. And I'd like to segment this to the work on what we say, why we say it, and how we say it. All right, let's talk about what we say. And this is all about the values that we convey through the words that we're saying. And I think it's really important to lead with empathy. And that's the first thing I change, I think, in my day-to-day work as a product marketer. It's been a tough year. It's been a tough year for everyone, and we need to acknowledge that. Calling it out that this is not normal, not starting a meeting as is, as we always done, because things are happening. We need to acknowledge that. Also, it's important to acknowledge the fact that the new normal is changing a lot of things. And we need to consider that when we are planning, when we build go-to-market plans or setting our goals. For businesses, this means different sales cycles, different spend trends, different decision-making. Their needs and considerations have changed. And for people, their physical and mental health is compromised or threatened, and their own needs and considerations have changed. Taking that into account is really important when planning for different teams, different messaging, different product launches. Now, another thing that I've changed in what we say is how we can harness the new normal into telling a stronger and more authentic story of our solutions or products. And I'll give you an example through one of our products, which is Instagram shops. Now, Instagram shops are essentially your digital storefront. However, when COVID hit and a lot of businesses struggled with not being online. A part of the shop's story was helping businesses re-emerge from the COVID crisis and giving them the tools to create that online store. Why we say it? Why we say it, I see as tying back goals and motivations. Some questions that I've had when thinking about this are, how do you cut through the noise when there's so much of it? And how do you tell a multi-product story in the midst of a pandemic? And the answer that I found for these questions are prioritization and bundling. Now, prioritization is always an important part of our job, but it becomes even more important than ever before with this new world. So we need to be very, very clear about what we're focusing on. I do it as a predefined theme or goal that I set out every half. I tie back smaller tasks to these goals. And I'm also very aware that I might need to change or adjust some of this because of this new normal. I try to cut out things that are out of scope, and I connect with my stakeholders' goals and motivations. Is it product adoption? Is it revenue? I try to have my focus on these things that would be more relevant for my main stakeholders. We like to say at Facebook, it's not prioritization unless it hurts. And I really feel that, especially in the last few months. We need to be very clear about what we're focusing on, but also what we're not going to focus on. Now, the way I see this from a tactical perspective is having a plan on a page where I tie my mission and vision of the company or the team I work in to my daily or monthly activities. And I share that plan on a page with my stakeholders and my cross-functional partners. This is an example of a plan on a page. This is, of course, it's just a mock, but having that vision, mission, strategy, product pillars, and focus areas helps you tie back the things that you're doing on a daily basis to the mission and vision. So let's say the overarching themes that you have, but also helps other people that you're working on and you're working with to clearly understand why is it important, the things that you're trying to communicate, and also how do they tie back to a bigger goal. How we say it. This is more around tools and tactics. Now, again, as I said, I worked a lot with sales leadership and sales teams, so this is more relevant to internal communication, but I can see some of this as being very relevant for external. Meetings. Meetings are a great way for us to connect. However, we need to be very strict on how we manage those. When it comes to pre-reads and notes and note-taking, it's really important to align people when you do get together. Having clear agenda and ending the meeting with action points and next steps is really important as well. I also try to schedule the meeting at 25 minutes instead of 30 to be a bit more stressed with time. And that way we could also be very cautious if we go off topic. Also important to note that meetings are a great way to get together, but we shouldn't use meetings for updates alone. We need to use the meetings as a way to progress. So brainstorm or decide on next steps. Written communications. I think this is the first thing that I've changed since the pandemic, is being very cautious of how I compose an email and what I write in it. And I always start with a TLDR. That helps people just understand very quickly if they screen read, which a lot of us do. They help us understand what is needed, what is the action and why is important. So I have a clear ask and I always have a timeline around that ask and I highlight those. I also have a template for my written communication covering the what, the who, the why, and when. And also these are tied back to my plan on the page. So that helps me just focus on what's important and my prioritization process. Feedback. It's really hard to pause everything and give feedback or ask for feedback. And I think that in this day and age or this working environment, we have to proactively look for that. Now, Adam Grant, who's an organizational psychologist, calls it blind spot, asking for blind spots in comparison to asking for feedback. That helps people adjust or be more inclined to answer that question, asking, what are my blind spots? So I think it's really important, especially now when it's very hard to just pause and give feedback on whatever is happening. Video. Now, using video, like a short form video to explain a complex update is something that I did a lot, especially when this first happened and we had a lot of different or complex product updates that we need to deliver to the sales teams. So using that format really helped me convey that message. Also, I try to record meetings if possible, and if not, we have notes in place. So other people that haven't attended or couldn't catch that meeting are always aligned on what we discussed and can join in on the conversation. And last but not least, trainings. So with the training format, it's really easy to do the talking head over a slide, and we did a lot of those. But considering the screen time that we have and that fatigue that we have from sales leadership and sales teams, I think it's important to try to adjust a bit. And I found that panel type discussions where questions are asked and answered by expert is really helpful to convey that message. So try that just to break the routine of a talking head on a slide. So to wrap up, we talked about the new normal not being normal at all. We talked about how we are uniquely positioned as Pmms to adjust and drive growth in these difficult circumstances. Leading with empathy is something that I hope you take with you from this talk. And also dance, you find answer. Thank you so much for joining me, and let me know if you have any questions. I'm happy to discuss. Thanks for the Product Marketing Alliance for having me, and I hope you all stay safe and healthy. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Whether you're sinking your teeth into a PMA event for the first time or have come back for a second bite of the cherry, welcome to Product Marketing Rendezvous. Before we set the ball rolling, we want to say a huge thank you to our speakers, you and everyone who is joining this event from around the world. We are sure you'll enjoy the sessions from our one-of-a-kind international lineup. With expert presentations, specialist talks and deep dive panel sessions on the agenda, suffice it to say, you're in for a treat. And here is some more good news. The insights don't stop here, not by a long shot. Our Slack community is home to dynamic conversations and contributions from thousands upon thousands of fellow product marketers. So if you're not already a member, come and join us today. It won't cost you a penny. If you have questions for the speakers or want to connect with them further, then please ask away in the comments section of the video or catch up with them on the PMA Slack community. But for now, sit back and join the rendezvous.
Hi, hello everyone, and welcome to this session, which I'm extremely excited to be hosting because this is something I'm really passionate about, and I'm hoping that you can learn a thing or two based on my experiences in Intuit and also in my general career. So in today's session, what you're going to be learning is primarily around three different topics. So number one, product marketing, what is it? Number two, what is product market fit? And then number three, let's look at what optimal messaging and a customer journey looks like. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and get started. My screen should have been shared by now. And with that said, we'll crack on. So we'll start off with a bit of an icebreaker because, you know, we're sitting in sessions all day. It's always nice to start off with something a bit lighthearted. So with that said, here's a wonderful GIF or GIF, however you pronounce it, or showing a man actually crushing some ice. So really dry humor there. You'll have to indulge me. But the actual icebreaker is, if you could listen to one album on repeat for the rest of time, which one would you choose? So feel free to type this in the chat and you can see what everyone's music preferences are, and then we can chat about it at the end. But anyway, have fun with that, and we'll come back to that at the end. Mine happens to be an album by Outkast. So for those of you who listen to their song Hey Ya, but that's a story for another day. So who is this guy talking to you on the other side of the screen? Well, my name is Saka Nuru. I'm the product marketing lead for FinTech at Intuit here in the UK, but I also work internationally as well. I'm also a venture capital scout for a company called Backed VC, where I'm always looking for new and interesting, innovative ideas that people can invest in. I've worked across Europe, Latin America, and Africa, including obviously the United States, if you can guess from my accent. I have experience in leadership, marketing, and sales as well. And my educational background is the fact that I went to UC Berkeley in 2014 with an engineering degree, actually, and then an undergrad in engineering as well. My hobbies, more importantly, are football, podcasting, and music. So we could talk about that all day. I also happen to have a consultancy called the Saka Group, where I have been featured in multiple publications. But this is pretty much here just to let anyone know that if they are looking for help on the side, they can feel free to reach out to me at admin@saka.ai, where we look at everything from product marketing, business coaching, customer experiences. Those are the three primary categories we deal with. But anyway, the reason why you're here is to learn something, not for me to just talk about myself. So what will you learn today? You'll learn about product marketing and market fit. You'll learn about good versus bad messaging, and you'll also learn about what a good customer journey looks like. So before we know what it is, we have to start with what it isn't. And here, one of the things that always bugs me or comes up is the fact that product marketing is not actually advertising, branding, text, or just designs. And I've put a picture of someone called Steve Urkel looking very dubious and suspicious about this. So anytime someone says that product marketing is any of these things specifically, it makes me wonder if they really know what they're talking about, because it is so much more than all this. And in fact, we'll get into the nitty-gritty of it. But these different elements play a role in product marketing, but they aren't necessarily the end-all be-all. In fact, the core part of product marketing entails product and market, which none of these things really address. So we'll get into that in a little bit, but anytime you hear of this or these three attributes being described as product marketing, you should know that that's not the end all be all. But anyway, since we're speaking at a product marketing conference, obviously most people would know this already, but just to establish what we're talking about here, what we're doing is we're trying to identify growth opportunities for whatever product or service that we offer. Number two, it's optimizing the product SKU plan. In this case here, I'm talking about the UK because this is my current jurisdiction, but it's understanding what are the different SKUs and ways in which customers try and solve their problem. Because is it a high value item they need? Is it a low value item? Is it, is it positioned as a premium product, a low premium product? Where does it fit in the grand scheme of the customer trying to solve their problem? That's what a product marketer helps them do. Also, driving definition and target customer and customer needs, should I say. So when you try and describe who your customer is, you can go along multiple different lines. Number one, it could be demographic. Number two, it could be geographic. Number three, it could be income level. Number four, it could be interests as well. So there are different ways that you can look at your target customer and understand what drives them and what their needs are, so that you can offer your product or service to that specific group. Because we all know if you try and market everything to everyone, you're really not marketing anything to anyone. So being specific is really, really important as a product marketer, should I say. And then also developing a value prop and competitive positioning. So why should someone buy into your product as opposed to another one? What makes it A, unique, and then B, does it actually solve the problem I have as a customer, as a user? So that's the way I would frame that a little bit. What is the USP and why would someone want to use a product as opposed to another? Another one we have here is monetization models and strategy. So obviously it's a business that you're running, whether you're an individual entrepreneur, a mid-sized firm, or a large firm, much like Intuit is, you have to figure out how you're going to make money for it to be sustainable. So whether you're charging per product, physical product that is, or whether you're charging on a monthly basis or a usage basis, all those different things come into play as part of what product marketing does. And last but not least, driving GTM excellence and product adoption. GTM here meaning go to market. So how exactly are we going to reach the customers we are trying to reach in a way that's suitable for them and ultimately drives acquisition, active use, all those types of things, showing that there's a product market fit for that specific segment. So again, why is this important? I mean, why do we do this as product marketers? And I think it's unique because we are in a particular role whereby you get to interact with the product, the market, and your existing customers. And so it's that intersection between these three. I look at it almost like a quarterback role. Without this role, you have product building things that might not necessarily be needed, or even if they do, perhaps that's not the best opportunity for us to pursue in the market because the competitive landscape is always changing. Customer expectations differ from day to day, from week to week. I mean, we've seen that happen with COVID over the past year, right? So the context of putting these things together is what makes this so important. Under the product, we've looked at things such as product strategy. So what is our goal and how are we going to leverage our competitive advantage from a product perspective to win the game? And that means winning the customer and being as sticky to them as possible. We can go through each of these, and I won't go into each of them in too much depth, but that's sort of the biggest pillar within the product side of things. And then under the market, you want to really understand what are your category drivers and your target audience here. So what would make someone want to buy into your product, your proposition? It could be social pressure, number one. It could be number two, a problem they're facing. Number three, it could be validation of some sort. There's so many different reasons why. What are their hopes? What are their fears? What are their triggers? Once you start to contextualize that, then you're able to offer them a solution in a very cogent manner. And obviously you can't forget your existing customers, right? So your existing customers, how are they using the product? Are they dropping off? Are they delighted by certain things? Are they not? What are the detractors? These are all the things that you need to analyze, and being data-driven is a key point I'll come into later on within your base to really ensure that it's a sustainable long-term strategy that you're undertaking, because it's one thing to fill people into the top of funnel, but once they get in and actually use your product, if they're dropping off, it's of no use to anyone. And ultimately there's a high attrition rate and you're not being sustainable. So these are some of the elements I wanted to highlight here into why I think this is important. Another quick reason as well is the fact that, as I mentioned, I also operate in the venture capital space. And here, when it comes to people wanting to invest in businesses or even deciding to pursue an idea, or a company that wants to, service this new target market that overlaps with their existing offering, whatever it is, there are a few factors that you need to consider as part of this. One of which is the strength of the entrepreneur team, or the team involved in general if you're a large firm. But if you look at the next few line items that have an impact in terms of deciding what to go for and what not to, you see that most of them are related to product marketing. So for instance, the size of the opportunity, which relates to the market I was mentioning earlier on. Is it a big opportunity? Is it a small one? And can we actually go after it? That's 15% of it. Product or service, as I mentioned, you can't have a great product or service unless you understand who you're building it for and what their needs are. That's another 15%. Sales channels. This is something I didn't highlight earlier on, but a big component of being a product marketer is sales enablement collateral. So giving your team the equipment they need in order to be able to sell the proposition is all based on features, benefits, messaging, hierarchies, all those types of things that you need to provide as a product marketer. So when you combine those three, that's almost about what, 40% of the reasons or the factors considered when making an investment or deciding to launch a new product line or things like that are revolved around product marketing, right? These are product marketing topics. So I want to make sure that I emphasize this so that it's not abstract and we understand why we're looking for product market fit and why the work we're doing is really important. I won't come into each of these respectively because I'm sure that we'll have people here that are experts in these different realms or pillars of product marketing in terms of deliverables and responsibilities. Today, we're just going to talk a little bit on product market fit, a bit on customer benefits and messaging, and I think that should be enough for today. But as you can see, the universe is wide and it encompasses a lot more than meets the eye. These pillars here, as I mentioned, involve things like product planning, influencing the SKU lineup, defining your value proposition and targeting, your GTM plan and delivering, and then also your product delight and insights that you can gain from your existing customers. So again, just to set up the grand scheme of things and the context with which we're working in, today's session will be very specific into one particular or a few particular topics that I'm interested in and you guys can learn from. So let's come into some of the key principles before we dive into the first topic, which is product market fit. We've been going through a lot of what product marketing is, but before we go on, it's really important that we understand those principles that are applied agnostically, regardless of the industry, geographical location that you're in, the vertical you're in. These are some of the basics. And so it's important that we understand what those are. The first is being customer obsessed and commercially driven. Without putting your customer first, oftentimes you will spend more energy building things that are not needed. And there's a wonderful TED talk where the man mentioned that the number one reason why things fail is because they're building something that's not actually needed. I believe it's about 42%. And so when you put it in context of that, being customer obsessed is probably the most important thing as a product marketer. But secondly, to that, being commercially driven, being sustainable, understanding how you're going to make money. Ultimately, we have these constraints of the real world where we're driven by KPIs and business metrics. And if you don't build something in context of that, you might build a great product, it might solve a great need, but it's not actually a business, right? Maybe people aren't willing to pay for it. So it's important to put that at the forefront of your mind. The second column here is understanding your target audiences and your existing customer as well. Like I mentioned, there's the top of funnel, but there's also the existing base. And so you have to understand what those two dynamics are, what that customer journey looks like, and what KPIs and metrics you should be monitoring along that journey. And then that flows very nicely into acting on data and insights. To be the best product marketer that you can be, and to be an effective one, data and insights are pretty much a religion, right? I mean, it's the basis upon which you will make all decisions and you can justify those decisions you make. But better yet, and more importantly, without the data and insights from your customers specifically, whether this be a survey that you kick off or data that you capture based on the experience and the way they're clicking on your website or app, where customers are going to and experiencing the biggest problems. So perhaps you see a drop-off rate along the customer journey. Without this information, you can't optimize for, number one, the biggest impact, and number two, the perhaps internal business constraints that you're facing as an organization. So I really want to make sure that it's important that you understand why this is important, and it has so many residual effects as well. So for instance, if you want to create business plans and customer strategies and all that kind of collateral, you have to have data and insights to be able to do that effectively. The next point here is you have to know and love your products. And when I say know, I don't just mean know who the product is for, but understand what are the technical limitations of this product. Why would someone decide to not use this product or service and switch to someone else? As I mentioned earlier on, what are the common areas or the steps along the journey of using this product that are the most problematic for our customers? Do we see high drop-off rates in certain places and not? If you don't have a core understanding of the product itself, the market, and your customers, ultimately you won't be able to solve for anything, and you won't be as an effective a product marketer. This other point here, perhaps people don't talk about it that much, but driving clarity is extremely important. And why I say that is oftentimes, as I mentioned, you're in that quarterback role. And in that role, one of your biggest imperatives is being a stakeholder manager, should I say. And as part of that, you're oftentimes required to communicate to different teams, as I mentioned, the sales teams, the product teams, all the different teams involved. And as part of that, if there's any ambiguity in the benefits of the product, in how it solves a problem, in the top, value proposition or USP items that you want to highlight, if there's any ambiguity there, the buck actually stops with you. It's not anyone else's responsibility. It's yours as the product marketer. And what it allows others to do, and I always think about this in a nucleus sort of fashion. So there's sort of a nucleus, and based on that, everything else builds off of that. So without the value prop, the messaging, the benefits and the customer experience, all those things refined, the other teams are likely to not speak from the same page, and the customer experience will be very disjointed depending on how they adopt and interact with your product. So if they call the sales team and they're saying one thing versus interacting with the product itself without interacting with anyone else, and there's different messaging or different USPs used there, then it's a completely disjointed journey and customers don't trust you, right? So ultimately, it's really important to be clear in getting that nucleus together and sharing it amongst your stakeholders so that the customer experience is finalized and drives adoption in the best way possible without leaving customers feeling like this is a disjointed experience. So that's why it's really important. And then last but not least, as I mentioned, stakeholder management involves working with partners, being collaborative, and being inclusive as well. So in different thought patterns, in getting feedback from your stakeholders, these are crucial to being an effective product marketer. So let's jump into product market fit. So it might sound like a very simple topic on the surface, but on the two sides, there is A, the product, and B, the market. But if we dive into each of these, let's look at the product side of things, right? So number one, your target customer, and number two, their underserved needs. What do we mean by target customer? As I mentioned earlier on, it's about who we're going after, what drives them, what are their behaviors, and how can we segment these customers according to demographics, geographics, whatever it is. Number two, what are their needs? Because as I mentioned earlier on, 42% of the reason why businesses don't survive is because they're not catering to a particular need. Put that in one context, and let's jump to the market side of things before I bridge the two. The market, right? Let's start off with the value proposition. Why should the customer, why should the end user care about this particular product, right? That is wholly dependent on if your value proposition meets their particular need. If they see value in your product, with any business, with any offering, ultimately people sign up if they see value in it. So understanding how this value proposition aligns with your target customer and their needs is where we start to see product market fit. If there's a unique match and you see people clicking through or signing up to your product, or a particular subset of customers signing up to your particular offering or service, then you start to get into the signs of, okay, there might be product market fit amongst this or amongst these customers here. Another section here under market is the feature set, right? So it's one thing to make a promise to customers and say, this is our value proposition, this is what we're going to be able to do for you. And it's another thing to actually deliver on that, right? So someone could say, I would like a car, right, for instance, but they are making six figures and the features they expect of their car is, beyond electric windows and a nice sat nav, they're expecting things like a fridge in there or whatever sort of high value benefit or feature that they're looking for in that particular product. If it's a SaaS product, it could be the ability to have an API integrate with whatever it is that they're looking to do in their particular realm or whatever it is. But what are the features that are needed for them to really understand your value proposition and reap the benefits in such a way that it actually solves for their problem? if your product doesn't actually live up to the promise of the value proposition you've made with the features that you're creating and the functionality within the product, then you don't really have product market fit. And last but not least, a clean user experience, right? As I alluded to earlier on, in that customer journey, there is a high propensity for customers to drop off. And you need to understand this from a data and analytics perspective, but also if you honestly look at some items, and usually run-of-the-mill items or products or services, oftentimes it's those that make it as easy for the customer as possible to interact with, right? This means a few things. Number one, slick interface and all the visual design and things like that. But number two, it could be cognitive load. If you think about it, anytime you're given 7 or 8 different options to choose from versus only being given 1 or 2, that puts more burden on the customer to make a decision versus when they're only given 1 or 2 options. This is a function of UX and product, experience or offering experiences. And so if the customer thinks that your product or service solves their problem, but they have a tough time actually adopting it, or you give more cognitive load to them in order to make a decision or to figure out where things are, then ultimately you really don't have good product market fit, because you're going to have high drop-off rates and sign-up rates and things of that nature. And we'll come into that a little bit afterwards. So in order to summarize this particular slide here, you'll have product market fit when, number one, you're addressing a specific customer's needs, right, that they've highlighted to you. Number two is the fact that the value proposition is clearly articulated. Number three is the fact that the feature set meets the promise of the value proposition that you've made and works for the customer. And then number four is the user experience meets the expectations of the customer and helps adoption, retention, and all the other GNS or figures that are needed. So this is where you start to see product market fit. And I'm going to walk you through an example here of some of the things you can look at to know if you actually have product market fit from an insights or analytics or data perspective. So the first one here is acquisition. So how well are your customers getting to your site or app or proposition, right? That funnel that I was mentioning earlier on, right? So if you have a lot of people coming to your page, app, offering service, and dropping off, that might be an indication that perhaps you don't have the right product market fit just yet. Number two, let's look at activation. So from sign up to actual first run, do you see high drop-off rates there? And this might have to do with the UX, UI that I mentioned earlier on, or perhaps the value proposition you've mentioned in the beginning, right, was not met with the feature set that you actually offer. So the promise was made, they sign up, they get there and they say, this actually doesn't work for me, and they don't actually actively use your product or proposition. That is where activation comes into play, and looking at those rates is where you can know if you have product market fit. Number three is retention. If you're losing a lot of customers, that might be an indication that there's a high churn rate, and ultimately customers don't feel once they sign up or activate your product that it's solving their particular need. This is probably one of the most crucial ones that I would say is a factor in determining if you have product market fit. Number four, referral. If you have people organically telling others about your product, then there's a strong indication that you have product market fit. And last but not least, revenue. As I mentioned earlier on, this is a business or you're running some sort of enterprise. Letting people know about what the price is important, because then you know if they're willing to pay for it. That's number one. And then number two, from a business perspective, knowing that you can actually generate revenue from this is important, because ultimately it won't be sustainable. And if customers aren't willing to pay for it, then you don't really have a business there. There really is no product or market to really go after. So here I wanted to give an illustration of sometimes how these metrics can be deceptive from time to time when you look at things on the surface. So here, what we're looking at are two different products, this product A and this product B. Now, if we look at the trajectory of product B, on the y-axis, we have the percentage that are active, right? We assume that 100% of people have signed up and they're active, meaning they've trialed your product or actually used it the first time, right? And over time, we see a linear drop-off, right? But that linear drop-off for product B in comparison to product A, which is a very steep product drop-off, tells us a very different story, right? And oftentimes the story goes like this. Product B, right, has great product market fit because the rate of active customers dropping off is slower than the rate of customers dropping off for product A, right? So looking at product B, you can see it's a steady slope, but product A is dropping precipitously, right? And what that means is, or at least on the surface, you could think to yourself, oh gosh, we have a lot of customers that actually aren't using our product. And so this is a disaster. We don't have product market fit and all those types of things. But that could be a very temporary situation, right? You might not necessarily need to change the product, perhaps a different demographic or whatever it is. And over time, as you see around that month or year 5 or whatever that time horizon is, it slowly and steadily starts to plateau. And what does that mean? That means a higher percentage of your active customers are now using your platform and the drop-off rate decreases. But for product B, it's still continuing at that rate from time 0 all the way up to time 20. So what does that mean? It means that within the first 5 years, 5 months, or whatever it is, in fact, on average, it takes about 18 months to find product market fit. But for all intents and purposes here, between time 0 and 5, it's very easy to make that assumption and jump to the conclusion that this is a horrible product, or the market is just not at the right place that we need it to be, or whatever it is. But that's a very short-term reaction. Once you start to see the data plateau, then you start to get into the nitty-gritty and the nuance of, oh, okay, perhaps it wasn't a product problem or a marketing problem, but now we've actually solved for where we keenly solve for the customer problem, who we're targeting, and ultimately customers are finding value in this, so they're staying for longer. Even though in the initial onset, we had a lot of pain and a lot of, false flags, so to speak. We've reached that point at which the number of active users is consistent, and that rate of drop-off is not as precipitous as it once was. So long story short, I'll leave this slide be, but I really want to make sure that it's important. You don't get caught up in the initial tropes of the fact that you have a high churn rate or all the metrics we spoke about earlier on. It just could be an early sign that you haven't quite found that product market fit for this particular SKU or product. And with some tweaks or with different messaging or with a different customer experience, you can find it relatively easily. So what exactly is good messaging and what is bad messaging? This is something that I think is important relating to that clarity portion of things I alluded to earlier on. And so here, I want to make sure that we have some principles, much like we did with the PMM side of things, the product marketing principles earlier on. So what is good and what is bad messaging? Number one is it's benefit-led. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen messaging on your website or app or whatever it is that says, hey, we are XYZ and we do this, this, and that. The customer doesn't care. They want to know what the benefit of using your product is. If you're not leading with the customer's perspective, then you're wasting your time. Number two is short and concise. Over time, we actually know that the average attention span has dropped from about 14 to 15 seconds all the way down to about 8 to 9 seconds today over the past 7 years. And what does that mean? That means that you have shorter attention spans and you have less time to convey your message. So being short and concise is imperative. And I see usually deep tech startups or enterprises oftentimes are so excited about all the wonderful tech they have that they forget that the customer doesn't care about the tech and all the nuances and intricacies of your SaaS platform or whatever it is. They care about, is this solving a problem for me, and how quickly can you convey that message to me? So being short and concise is extremely important. Number three, what are the differentiators, right? Why should I use yours as opposed to another person's offering or service? If a cup is a cup is a cup, or a car is a car is a car, or software is software is software, then there's no real reason why they should use yours over anyone else's unless you articulate that to them. So understanding what those differentiators are, whether it's price point or a customer experience or customer restrictions or feature sets or whatever it is, you have to highlight those. Number four is you have to speak to your particular audience. As I mentioned, there's no point trying to sell Bitcoin to, I guess, our grandmas or our grandpas or whatever it is, because they just don't understand it, right? It's not really necessarily their time. So you're better off trying to market it to millennials who are looking to, invest in new types of assets or things like that. Again, if you're solving a problem for everyone, you're solving a problem for no one. Table stakes. What are those things that your customers expect from your product without you even articulating it to them? I'll go back to the classic example of a car, let's say. If you buy a car, you expect it's going to have wheels, right? Much like if someone signs up for your SaaS product or service, They're going to expect basic things, maybe the ability to have an API to transport data between this platform and the platforms they currently use, the ability to export reports. These are basic things that they're expecting from you, right? RTB, reasons to believe. So you've made this great value proposition up. You've highlighted it to me in a clear way, but why should I believe you, right? Whether you have claims and testimonials, or you could even have case studies or social proof or whatever it is, but there have to be some reasons for me to be convinced about this. And any message would usually have elements of an RTB or reason to believe within there. And last but not least, a CTA, so a clear call to action. And we need to do away with this notion of learn more, or, you know, soft, or what should I say, very, to be quite frank with you, weak CTAs that don't convey confidence and a clear next step for your customer. Because what does learn more mean? Learn more about the sales process to purchase this product, learn more about the application and use case of this product. It's such a vague CTA. So I think being more articulate with the CTAs, like sign up or book a demo, or, you know, something very specific, shows that you're confident in your proposition and you know exactly where the customer is in their funnel and what the next stage should look like. So these are the different elements of a good message. And in fact, we'll actually look at some examples here. So let's look at the Intuit QuickBooks website. So what I'll do here actually is I'll pause for about 30 seconds for everyone to take a look at this based on the principles we've spoken about earlier on, and think to yourself, is this a good or bad message? So I'm going to pause here for a second. Try and pay attention to the different visual elements, the brevity and how concise the messaging is, perhaps the way it's ordered and laid out. I'll give it about 10 more seconds here. So just take a quick look and just think about some of the things that you can see based on what we spoke about. Okay, so let's get into it. Looking here, a few different elements pop up. So the first is the headline, right? Fast, secure payments with smart invoicing and more. Is that benefit led? Okay, it's fast. It helps me achieve what I'm trying to achieve, which is getting paid with this product or service. So they haven't really mentioned, you know, what the product is specifically, but I know it helps me save time, or it makes me quicker in some way, shape, or form. So perhaps the word fast and secure payments is more benefit led than most of the messaging I've seen out there, but it could be improved upon. Let's look at the CTAs. So we see that there are two. One says see plans and pricing. The other says learn more, right? Is this good? Well, the learn more part, what am I learning more about? As I mentioned, we have to be more specific there. But see plans and pricing, it's a very direct order for you to take an action and purchase the product. So that's a good one. Now, can this be improved? Yes, because number one, this version of the page could be adapted for existing and new customers. A surprising amount of existing customers come to your pages as well to sign up for ecosystem products. But if they come here and they see plans and pricing, they're like, well, I already use this product. So what am I buying exactly? Here, you're trying to sell to someone that's already an existing customer. So again, depending on if they're existing or new to the franchise or prospect customer, you might want to have different CTAs for them. If we come down and we look at the headline, it says, discover an easy way to manage payments. Okay, relatively concise, right? If we come to the three different pillars, so this is where we're highlighting the value proposition, right? So save, or should I say send invoices that get noticed. Okay, I want to send some that get noticed, because if they don't notice it, I don't get paid. So that's customer obsessed. That is perhaps lacking on the uniqueness. So what makes it unique versus the customers or the competitors, should I say, sorry. But maybe that information is actually stored below. So it says create customized invoices featuring your logo and targeted promotions. Okay, perhaps you're the only company that allows me to do that and others don't let me customize. So this is that element of differentiation that I was mentioning earlier on. I don't want to spend too much time on the others, but you can start to get into this train of thought. You think of the differentiation, you think of the customer benefit, you think of the brevity of the messaging. These are the types of things that you want to analyze and look at to know if your product has the best chance of achieving product market fit. Let's take about 15 to 20 seconds and look at this one here. Pay attention to some of the things that I alluded to earlier on in terms of brevity, value proposition, differentiation, perhaps table stakes and things of that nature. All right. So now that you've probably had a chance to take a quick look at this or a quick glance, there's some things that should stand out to you, right? Let's start off with the headline, a better way to send money. Okay, they're not talking about the product here. They're talking about how this message helps me, right, in my life. A better way to send money. Seems like a pretty good headline. And I actually give them probably an 8 out of 10 for this one here. Next thing you see is choose a country to send it to. So what does that tell you about the target market, who they're going after? Probably people that send money internationally, right? Might make sense to show different cultures or different, ethnicities or whatever it is. Hence why you probably see different ethnicities or people of different backgrounds that typically send money across country in the hero image, right? So you start to see all the different elements are starting to interact with each other, right? It's customer driven. We're not talking about the product. I understand why I would want to use this perhaps because it's talking about which country I'd like to send it to. So I know that the target audience here is perhaps international, people that send money abroad. Who can afford to do things like that? It's probably middle class or I don't know, someone that has found or gotten their recent education by traveling to another country and has got their first job and needs to send money back home to their folks. Whatever it is, you start to paint a picture of who would want to use this product, right? So let's go into why they would choose this product. So it says we're simple. This isn't the best because again, this is not customer driven. This is not customer focused. You're talking about yourselves and the customer doesn't care about you really. And I'm just being very frank, at the end of the day, they care about how you solve their problem. Now, a better title here would be something that describes how it helps them out. So let's look at the actual nitty gritty where it says, no need to visit an agent, send 90 currencies to 150 countries from your smartphone or computer. Okay, so what would a different heading look like there that would articulate how that helps me as a customer, as a user, right? I don't care if you're simple or not. Well, I mean, I do care to a certain extent, but ultimately what I want or what you're describing to me here is the fact that I don't have to visit an agent. I don't have to spend time, using your platform for certain countries and others I won't send it for. So really what you're talking about is that it's easy to use your product, right? That's what you're trying to convey. So you're making that person's life easier, not the fact that you're simple. It's the fact that you're making their life easier, right? So that's what you want to highlight. Over here, we're fast, okay? Again, you want to highlight to them the fact that their money will be sent quicker. So here, a better headline would be along the lines of send your money instantly, or something along the lines that lets them know what's in it for them in terms of you being fast, because they don't care, right? 90% of our transactions are authorized in minutes. That's a great stat. This actually goes to what I mentioned earlier on, which is the social proof or reasons to believe, RTBs, that I alluded to earlier on. So that you should actually highlight a bit more, to be very frank with you. So I'll pause here and we'll move on to the other parts. But again, when you start to think about it more deeply, you start to understand what good and bad messaging looks like. So this is a pretty good page so far, I'll be honest with you, but there are things they could improve upon. So this is the last one here. This is for a company called Gocardless. Again, I'll give you 10 to 15 seconds to just peruse through this and see if you can highlight any of the elements that I've spoken about earlier on. So look at the headline. Look at the CTAs perhaps. Are those good? Are those bad? You can look at the visuals as well, but we're focusing more here on the messaging. Okay, we'll stop in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so now that we have had a chance to analyze this, let's look at the headline message, made for reoccurring payments. Okay, that's not bad. You're not talking specifically about the products, in its entirety. It's not the most customer-focused thing I've ever seen, but it's okay. It's sort of a middle ground. You know what it's made for, what its intent and purpose is. So they're very clear from the onset, which I mentioned is another thing about being a product marketer, clear messaging. Number two, it's pretty short and concise. They're telling you exactly what this is made for. They're not saying Gocardless does X, Y, Z, blah, blah, blah. We're simple. No. This is what it's made for. Do you need to do that task, right? Let's go into the CTAs. Sign up and talk to sales. Very clear CTA, so that's good, right? they're actually showing you which one or which group of customers this is made for, or this page is made for, by highlighting the sign up button as opposed to the talk to sales one. Why do you think they do that? Because encouraging you to sign up shows that you're a prospect, most likely, not an existing customer. But more importantly as well, that's the action they want you to take at that particular point. You talking to sales is just an extra barrier, right? That is if you need to be convinced by things above and beyond what you see on this page. But that's an extra step in that journey and sales funnel, which they're trying to disincentivize. That's why you see sign up highlighted and talk to sales not highlighted. So these subtle things, play a part in messaging. So I'd say that's pretty good. Now let's talk about social validation, right? Reasons to believe. Why should I think this is good or not? Well, if I go to the bottom, hey, DocuSign, I've heard of DocuSign. They're pretty cool. Oh, I use them all the time. HM Government, okay, so I know that it has some backing by large institutions, but then I look at Bulb, okay, that means startups also think they're good. So this has a wide application. It doesn't necessarily only solve for one customer group or one segment. It could solve for people that are, in different verticals or different geographies or different systems or different levels of bureaucracy. I see The Guardian there, okay, reputable, or depending on how some of you think, but a fairly reputable publication. And so this is the social proof. So looking at this, the message, about 4 or 5 of the different messaging points that I alluded to earlier on have been hit. So I would give this probably about a 7.5 out of 10. And it's very clear and concise. So we'll move on from here into the last and final part of today's talk, which is the customer journey. So we've spoken about sort of the PMM role in its entirety. We've spoken about product market fit to a certain extent. We've spoken about messaging, and last but not least, I'd like to speak to you about a customer journey, the UX and UI part of things, or the end-to-end experience. So what you see here are a few screens of Lyft. Lyft is sort of the Uber competitor in the United States, which is a ride-sharing platform, right? Now, how do we know if this is a good or bad customer journey? There are a few different elements I'm going to highlight here. Number one is there a clear layout of what the step-by-step process looks like and where I'm at in that cycle? So here they're telling you that there are 3 parts to it and is very clear and succinct. Not that there are 15 or 20, and it's not left up to the customer to find out later on that this involves 17 different steps. No, they're telling you this involves 3 different steps, and this is how you're going to go through that journey. So setting that customer expectation and being clear about that lets me know that this is a pretty good customer journey so far, okay? Now, let's come down here a little bit and let's look underneath each of these pillars. So under request, it shows whether you're writing solo or with friends, you've got options. Tap Lift, Lift Line, or Lift Plus. So let's relate this back to some of the product marketing stuff we alluded to earlier on. Here is the first mention of the different SKUs that they have. And as I mentioned, understanding what the different monetization models are and the different SKUs and the different offerings you have is a key component of relaying what your value proposition is. But over here, someone doesn't actually know the difference between Lift Line, Lift Plus, and regular Lift. Now, it's alluded to in the messaging earlier on, which is writing solo and things like that. So you're setting the expectation, but you haven't mapped out which one is solo, which one is for friends, and what the actual difference is between the SKUs. So there's a bit of ambiguity here around any customer that signs up thinking, okay, maybe Lift Plus is the one that lets me share with people, or is it Lift Line? I'm not really sure which one, but okay, that's fine, right? You're setting some sort of expectation, but it's a bit ambiguous. So to improve this, you could be a lot more straightforward about what the different SKUs and different options the customer can expect as part of this journey and as part of the offering. And that's a much cleaner and better user experience. If we come to part 2, so ride. So what is my experience going to look like as a customer? It says I'll get picked up by the best, right? So you're setting the expectation that I'm not getting picked up by some random guy that just got, a DUI or whatever it is. They're telling you that in your experience, you can expect the best. They're telling you here that the drivers are reliable and will get you where you need to go. So again, coming back to the customer expectation, you're telling me the fact that I don't have to cognitively or worry about who will be picking me up. You've taken care of that, right? Which comes to good messaging and all the things we've spoken about before, but it's a good customer experience or journey because now you've set that expectation of what using your service or product would be like and how you're alleviating some of those pain points. And then last but not least, we're talking about pay, right? So it's pretty simple and straightforward. In fact, I love the brevity of it. Just pay, finish. And when the ride ends, just pay and rate your driver through your phone, right? So in other words, here they're highlighting the fact that once you're done, it's a very simple and sleek interface or experience to make the payment and conclude the transaction, right? Because there are two parts when someone adopts your product. There's the actual use and experience of your product, but then there's also the sort of sign up or drop off experience, right? And so as part of that sign up experience, it's, you know, collecting their details, blah, blah, blah. There's all those different elements involved. Again, as part of that journey, what does that look like? How are you optimizing for it? How are you setting the expectation? And here what we're talking about is the actual experience of using the product. So looking for a driver, booking them, paying them, all those types of things. And then if I decide to stop using this app, you know, are you collecting details about why I stopped using this app? Maybe are you giving me a referral or some sort of incentive to stay with this app? You know, all those types of things. What does the journey and customer experience look like in each of those distinct phases and what they can expect, right? So I realize that we've gone into quite a bit of detail with regards to all the ones before, so we perhaps don't have as much time to go into this one here, but the moral of the story is for you to have an optimal customer journey, think about those three different stages, right? Think about the expectation that you're setting for them along the way. Think about the clarity of messaging of what the different steps entail and letting the customer know where they sit in that current journey and what they can expect in the next stage. So I'll pause it there. Thanks so much for joining today. If you want to reach out to me, you can. But it's a pleasure to speak to you, and I'm very much looking forward to hearing your thoughts on this topic and the things we've spoken about today. As you can see, I'm pretty passionate about product marketing at Intuit and the other things I do as well. Feel free to add me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to connect with everyone and talk about, you know, these exciting things that are happening in this sort of internet and hopefully industry 4.0 age. Thank you so much and take care.
Welcome to Product Marketing Rendezvous. We're preparing to unleash yet another exciting presentation that's sure to set your pulse racing. But first, we want to thank you and our ensemble of speakers and participants for helping us bring this pioneering event to life. Without you, it'd be fantasy, a mere pipe dream. And remember, have your questions at the ready, because the speakers will be answering your questions and offering tailored support after their presentations. Leave your question in the comments below and get awesome advice from an expert in the field. It's really that simple. Let's resume the rendezvous.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to my session called Can I Get a Quote? The Anatomy of a Great Case Study Program. My name is Asya Bashina. I am the Director of Marketing at a company called LinkSquares, which makes an end-to-end AI-driven contract lifecycle management platform to help legal teams move their business forward faster and help them create and analyze and report on the state of their contracts. A little bit of background on me. I have 9 years of experience working in all areas of marketing and product marketing. Started my career working at a big company called SolidWorks, a 3D design software company, managed the retention, marketing, and case study program there. And I'll be talking a little bit about that today. Took some time off from the working world, got my MBA at a super innovative MBA program at Cornell University called Cornell Tech. Spent some time working in demand gen at Product Board, which is a product management software company. And then most recently, I was at a company called Humatics, which develops hardware technology to help you find absolutely anything at any scale that's important. So think about, especially in an industrial environment. So think about finding a train underground or ensuring that your drill lines up exactly with the bolt and helping manufacturing companies get better precision in their work. So let's dive right in. What is a case study? Just to start, just to give you some background on this. So a case study is a story highlighting your customer success using your product. What does that mean, really? Strong case studies essentially highlight your customers' use and their ROI with your product. So think about efficiency gains, time, and cost savings. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about how to actually build a program around it. Now, just to give you some examples of case studies, they can come in different forms. They can be an online review on a platform like a Trustpilot or G2, something you might find on Google Reviews. Those are all case studies. Case studies can also be a dedicated page on your website highlighting your customers' ROI metrics, highlighting their stories and their use cases. I think the important thing to understand here is that it's not one size fits all. There's a lot of different ways to leverage customer stories in your business that can cover different channels and can cover different tactics as well. So today, really what I'm going to highlight for you is sort of the path to leveraging a case study. And the path I've outlined here is, first of all, you have to identify what a good case study means for your business. You have to find a happy customer to actually talk about the use of your products. You have to, once you have a set of great customers to highlight in your case studies, you have to sort of piece together and think about who to leverage for which opportunities, because not everyone's going to be great on video. Not everyone's going to be willing to give a quote for a press release. Not everyone wants to sort of speak on stage at your event about their use of your products. So you really want to be judicious about how you use your customers. And then how do you build a program around that? And lastly, I mean, the mark of any good program is what does success look like? How do you measure that? So what's really in a good case study? I kind of break it down into three things. First of all, you have to have a happy customer. You're not going to get a great case study out of someone who doesn't like using your products or is really unhappy about the functionality. Typically, a happy customer looks like someone who's just banging down your door to tell you about what they've done with your software or with your product. They're always looking for an opportunity to tell you how much they appreciate your service, how much they appreciate a certain functionality. They're always sort of first to provide some kind of feedback that's constructive, but also helpful to your business. But at the same time, they're genuinely happy with your products. And they may have left a really positive G2 review for you without you asking. Additionally, they have to have a compelling use case. If someone uses your software, but they barely use some of the functionality, that would not make a good case study. So they really have to have like a compelling story. Ideally, it aligns with the use cases you highlight on your website or in your messaging generally. And then beyond that too, they have to have clear customer value that they're getting from using your products. So what's their ROI? Were they able to save time, do something more efficiently? Did it help them, build better products? Did it help them save money? Did it help them, create more cohesive marketing campaigns? Like, what is that value? And can you break it down to a metric? I think that's what's really important here. The second piece is, okay, now we've defined what a great case study means. How do I actually go about finding this happy customer? And so I've touched on this a little bit before, but really it's someone who, in addition to sort of beating down your door and wanting to tell you every piece of their use of the product and their excitement with it, and sort of shouting from the rooftops about how they're excited they are. Typically these happy customers are repeat purchasers, so you don't necessarily want to highlight someone who's churned or someone who looks at like they're at risk of churning. Also, typically these folks kind of score on a 9 or 10 on an NPS scale. Those people are the most likely to recommend the product to their friends and colleagues, therefore great case study material. And then, as I mentioned, they're shouting from the rooftops about how excited they are with your product. They might independently write about it on Twitter. They might refer users to your brand and to your products. They might, leave a positive review for you without you asking. There's a lot of different ways, but usually you could spot these people from 1,000 miles away and you're like, okay, this is the person that we want in a case study. We want to highlight their story. We want to get them in their amazing experience with our product in front of our prospects and in front of our users. Now, there's other additional ways to find some of these happy customers. For example, if you have a community for your users, any kind of a forum or a private Facebook group, you'll typically be able to find the people that are most excited to, talk about your products, ones that are always jumping to help other users make the best use of their solutions. And typically, I think one way to actually nurture some of these happy customers and build out the momentum is to build out either like an early customer council, an early Slack channel for some of your early users, early adopters. You could build out a Facebook page. And there's a number of companies that do this really, really well. For example, Dave Gerhardt, he has more of a marketing community, but he essentially nurtures his community for people to provide, to provide value to users, but then also to sort of suss out some happy users as well who'd be willing to provide feedback, provide testimonials, bring in referrals. And in a similar way, there's a lot of companies in the B2B SaaS space that do something very similar. Like Buffer has their own Slack channels, and obviously they deliver some additional value like product updates, best practices, things like that. But those are also tools to get really happy customers. And so that's something that you guys definitely need to look into and make use of if it makes sense for your business. It's the greatest. It's such an amazing tool for product marketers, even beyond case studies. You could use these communities to essentially learn about customer use cases, do customer research very organically, but you know, and then of course that way you can pull out some great stories as well for your case study program. So I'm going to take a quick aside here and just talk about the principle of persuasion, because I think it's very important, especially when you think about case studies and you think about the case study program. As I mentioned, you know, delivering value sort of comes first for your brand and business. If your product can't deliver value to users, then they're never going to give you a case study. But you know, as I mentioned with some of these customer communities, if you're delivering great value to users and you're sort of asking them to share different stories about how they use the product, or they start swapping best practices, you can start to sort of envision a path for them to become a great testimonial for you. Or, you know, even if they interact with your customer success team, they keep on giving a 9 or 10, you're like, oh, this person sounds really great on the phone. I want them to speak at an event, but I want to sort of highlight the fact that the principle of persuasion really is a very important piece. If you guys are familiar with Cialdini, he has this theory on persuasion where you sort of ask someone to do a small favor for you first before you ask a bigger favor. And one of his great examples is that that has to do with lawn signs. If you want someone to put up a giant lawn sign on their yard and you come up to them and say, hey, can I put up this giant large lawn sign on your yard? They're going to say, no, I'm not going to do that. But if you say, hey, I have this tiny little sign for you. I just want to really promote my thing. Can I put this like in the corner of your lawn? They'll say, yeah, sure. This, of course, you could put it up. And then before you know it, once you've asked them for this little favor, then you could sort of level it up, because at this point, the person is less likely to say no because they've already done a little favor for you. So they'll be like, oh, well, what's one slightly bigger favor? What's one slightly bigger favor as well? And so within that, the principle of persuasion also applies to case studies, because in case studies, you don't want to ask for the world right away. You don't want to say, hey, I want you to go travel to California, speak at one of my events. I'm going to give you a 45-minute slot. Are you willing to do that? Some people might be, but usually you sort of have to nurture that relationship, ask things sort of over time versus just asking for the world right away. And so I encourage you guys to sort of think about the principle of persuasion as I think about the way that you build out a case study program. So this really kind of ties into my next piece, which is you have to see how you're going to leverage different customers for different things, and how you can actually build or nurture their customer testimonials over time. And so that really kind of ties into this little matrix that I put together. This is just an example. It can be different for your business. You can define these things slightly differently, but this is sort of what I mean in terms of the principles of persuasion. Like you might want to start just by asking high NPS promoters, high NPS scoring promoters to give you a G2 review. Once they've given you a good G2 review, if you uncover a cool use case, then you ask if you could do a video case study with them. If they give a great video case study, they look great on a video camera, maybe then you start to sort of see if they'd be willing to do a webinar with you. If they're if they prefer, you know, if they don't look great on video, maybe you do a case study document with them, or a case study page, or a case study article. And then if you like the quote there, they maybe said something really amazing about how your product, say, enabled remote work for them, then you ask if you can include it in a press release. But I would say that sort of going from 0 to event presentation, or 0 to, oh, would you be willing to get on a reference call with one of our prospects, is probably a bad call, just because that's a big ask from customers that while you've built a relationship with them through your products, you haven't necessarily built like a personal relationship with them in a case study sphere. And so asking for the world might be a bridge too far in some cases. Also, I feel like people sometimes forget that reference calls are sort of a version of a live case study. And so sometimes that might be something that the marketing team owns. Sometimes that's what the customer success team owns. But there's certainly ways to sort of leverage the customers that have left a G2 review and then kind of build them up to the reference call program. Again, that might fall more under customer success versus product marketing, but it certainly does count as a case study as well, just in a different form. And so the next piece is, once you've defined sort of what those different stages of a case study look like for your business, the next piece is really building out a program and sort of thinking strategically about how you do this and what the different steps are within this program. So for example, when you think about building out a case study program, you really have to think about it in a strategic way and kind of focus on building out the goals. So first and foremost, in order to build a successful program, you have to understand, like, what are your key organizational and marketing goals? Is it to drive net retention? Is it to drive adoption of a specific product that users haven't started adopting that well yet? What is it? Because without that, you're not going to build a successful case study program, because it doesn't really build up to your overall organizational goals. Once you've answered that, the next question is sort of, as I said, how does this translate into your case study goals? So say you're focused on getting more customers to adopt a new product you have. Maybe in that case, you start baking in either a case study request into your beta program, so you can get some early case studies to use as juice to promote these new products. And maybe you give early access to a feature to some of your most loyal customers in return for a case study. And so how do you translate those pieces? For net retention, I mean, you may want to, in that case, highlight some stories of customers who have expanded their product suite with you guys. So for example, like, they buy one tool that you offer and had 5 people using it, but then they brought in 10 more people, and then they also bought another tool, and then they bought another tool, and then they bought another tool, and then expanded into the company. Like, that would be an interesting, compelling story about how the team essentially developed novel processes around your tooling and how your tools became embedded in their organization. That might be one way to address net retention. And so you really have to sort of think about those kind of goals. The other piece is sort of, okay, do you need more industry coverage? For example, you have a ton of customers in tech, but you only have a handful in healthcare, and you really want to double down in healthcare. Well, maybe you go talk to those few customers in healthcare and see if they'd be willing to provide a case study, or maybe you start sort of putting that goal down as to get those case studies from those healthcare customers. So that's really what I'm talking about when it's sort of like, okay, how do I take my organizational goals and translate them into case study goals? Because fundamentally, the goal of a case study is to help not just tell your customers' success with your products, but also serve as a tool for sales. Serve as a tool for sales to sell your products, serve as a tool for sales to highlight different use cases. And if you're not using your case studies to enable your sales team, then you probably need to sort of rethink what it is that your case studies are doing for your business, and whether they're truly delivering value. Beyond that, again, like I touched on this already, but what are the case study gaps? What do they look like? Is it use case gaps? You want to highlight different use cases. Is it industry gaps? Is it product gaps? Is it specific ROI metrics? These are other things that you need to think about as well. And then also think about the channels that you have at your disposal. Like, do you guys have the opportunity to leverage G2, or are your users not usually shopping for products on G2 or looking at testimonials? Are they more frequently on Yelp or Google reviews or some other channel? Do you guys have a press release program? Can you plug stories into there? Do you guys do annual events or webinars? Do you have a dedicated video resource, or could you realistically put one on filming case studies? And so you have to really evaluate that as you also think about the program, because if you don't have those resources available, then it might be tough to build something out around this. And then lastly, no program is successful without a specific measure of success and an ability to actually measure what it is you're doing and whether it has an impact. And so those are the sort of the different levels I go through when I think about building out a case study program and what that means. And so, of course, how do you actually measure success? Case studies are so nebulous in some ways, and product marketing can be so squishy and hard to measure, but there are different ways that you can sort of highlight the benefits of case studies to your business. And so here are some examples. For example, of the users who've read your case studies, how many requested a demo? Are these case studies effective in getting your customers to click the request a demo on a customer testimonial page, for example? Also, what are the case studies, or which case study does your sales team use most frequently to reference? You might have an entire library of case studies, but your case study team always goes for that one case study with that one customer. That's an interesting piece of information, because then you can start thinking about, okay, well, how can I replicate that? How can I build out similar types of case studies? And that's something you want to measure. You want to see if your sales team's making use of all of your case studies, some of them more than others, and then kind of drill into why. Also, which of your customers advocate the most to your prospects? Which of them are the most successful and converting prospects as well? So is there one customer that your sales team always pulls in for reference calls because they're amazing? I think that's one way to highlight, okay, what is it that's so amazing about this customer? What have we done so well here? I would say, yeah, we've done a really great job with this particular user from a customer testimonial perspective, because they're always willing to get on the phone with prospects. How do we replicate that? Also, what are your top converting case study channels? Are you getting a ton of demo requests from G2? Or are you seeing that any kind of byline or press release that's written or features a customer drives inquiries from third-party sites? Or is it, your case study videos versus your case study page? Is it webinars? What are sort of the areas that get the most people excited? Because again, then you can start to think out, how do I replicate that? How do I build more? Also, which case study gets the most views and visits? Which customers are your loudest advocates? Who's always on Twitter talking about how amazing your products are? Who's the one who's the most vocal on your communities and willing to sort of jump in and answer any customer questions? Who mentions your products at events without you asking them to do so, saying that your company is doing things correctly? I think that's the best kind of testimonial, as an aside, that I've ever heard. Is I was at an event, I talked to a customer, they really loved our product. This was an event that wasn't my company's event, it was just sort of an industry event. This guy then went out, and I hadn't asked him to give a customer testimonial or anything like that, but he went up on stage, he gave his presentation on his outlook of the industry, and then he said, you know what? And this company Humatics is doing things right. And here's why. And to me, that was like the biggest mind blown kind of experience, because I certainly didn't ask for that testimonial, but he went up and did it. And he went up and sort of talked about how happy he was with sort of the vision of our company and our product and our products, that it really sort of solidified that he was a really great advocate. And then, you know, I'd be remiss if I didn't highlight a case study on a successful case study program. So just to sort of circle it back and really kind of talk to you about a successful case study program. One of the things that we did at SolidWorks is really kind of build out the case study program using the levers that I described to you guys in this presentation. And so really the result there was that we developed like a full methodology for how we think about case studies. How do we ensure that the program has been successful? What goals do we set for the year? How do we take different customer stories and kind of divide them up into different channels, into different opportunities, things like that? And, you know, it took us about, since SolidWorks is a pretty big company, it took us about a year to revamp the case study program and build out a novel methodology to sort of build out a more strategic, cohesive case study program. But the result was, you know, our customer stories page was one of the top 5 visited pages on our website. Our sales team was constantly using case studies to close deals, to sell new products. We actually leveraged our beta customers to highlight some new products that were hitting the market as well. We also had a lot of increased repeat customer advocates who would go on Twitter and just talk about how happy they were with our product. They were super vocal. We had a major following on Twitter and other social media sites. And so the program that we built out worked really well. And, you know, since then, SolidWorks has doubled down even more to sort of focus on their top case studies stories and kind of organize them on the website for users to be able to surface them more easily. But, you know, this program ended up driving, you know, a ton of attendance at our annual user conference. It also ended up creating a lot of amazing advocates that were willing to get on stage at our annual conference and talk about how they use the products and things like that. And I don't want to, you know, say it was all because of the customer story program. It definitely wasn't. It was sort of the power of the product and our company as well. But our customers were repeat buyers. And so we definitely wanted to leverage those repeat buyers in our case study program. And so really, I mean, this is a result that you can get if you build out a really great program. You can build out a user conference and have your customers speak on stage. You can, you know, level up the amount of visits that you get to your customer stories page. And also you can really help out sales and have them pull on your case studies whenever they need to, as soon as they need to help promote prospects. And so that's the way it is. That's the way you do it. And of course, it's not, you know, one and done. There's different approaches to the same problem, but here's something that I found successful. And I'm certainly looking forward to replicating this in my current role at LinkSquares as well. And so, yeah, this concludes my talk. Thank you so much for attending, for learning about how to build out a case study program. I'm really excited and happy that you guys have joined. Quick plug and quick shout out. I am hiring 2 product marketing managers at LinkSquares to help us launch products, build out sales enablement, and build out our case study program as well. So feel free to reach out to me at my email, abashina@linksquares.com. Happy to answer any questions related to customer testimonials, and or the product marketing roles on my team. So please feel free to reach out, and I'll be here to answer any questions. Thank you.